And now Marco Rubio contradicts Donald Trump. Donald Trump contradicts himself. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen doesn't seem to know what the word war even means. He's like debating himself on that every single day. We need an actual plan. I haven't seen a plan from this administration.
Progressive commentator Adam Mockler appeared as a guest on Abby Phillips' CNN program, where he joined a panel discussion that also included conservative strategist Scott Jennings. And the segment quickly turned into a lively political debate with strong opinions coming from both sides, as Mockler and Jennings went back and forth on several major issues, while Abby Phillip worked to moderate the discussion and keep the conversation moving. And in the clips we are about to look at, we will see some of the key moments where their arguments really collide. So we're going to break down the most important parts of that exchange and talk about what really stood out during the debate, along with a few observations about how the whole conversation played out. So let's get into it and take a closer look at what happened.
First, as the U.S. warns that attacks against Iran are going to intensify in the coming hours and days, the administration can't seem to get its story straight about why the war began in the first place. In the weeks leading up to the strike and in the days since, the president and his administration have offered evolving explanations. We've counted at least 9 so far.
I've made the statement very strongly that if they start killing people like they have in the past, we will get involved.
He wanted to make sure that Iran could never have a nuclear weapon.
Their swelling arsenal of ballistic missiles and killer drones are no longer tolerable risks.
They were going to attack. If we didn't do it, they were going to attack first.
That experience was clearly on his mind as he ordered the attack that killed the supreme leader. He told me, I got him before he got me. They tried twice. Well, I got him first.
Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world.
Elimination of their Navy so we can have freedom of the seas and not be threatened with the shutdown of the Gulf of Hormuz.
When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations.
Iran has posed an imminent risk to the United States for 47 years.
Because they're evil and they're bad. It's a bad seed, and somebody had to do it. And it should have been done sometime during a 47-year period.
So when you hear all of that, just note this new reporting from the Wall Street Journal. It says U.S. officials, lawmakers, and experts all say that the administration's assertions have been incomplete, unsubstantiated, or flat out wrong. Some people have suggested that what's at play here is strategic ambiguity. Bobby, do you see that? Or do you see fishing for an explanation that can cover all bases?
Well, strategic ambiguity is in itself a sort of ambiguous term that people reverse engineer into situations like this often. When you don't have a clear line, you could throw that out there as a kind of plausible explanation. No, I don't buy that. I think this is what you see is what you get. You're seeing confusion play out, and I think that confusion, and it would be, you could make the case for strategic ambiguity if the messaging from this administration on so many other things, so many other aspects of foreign policy had been clear and concise and cleanly defined. But this is a pattern we've seen not just in Iran. We've seen it with most recently with Greenland. You get different messages from different parts of the administration, and sometimes from the president himself, depending on what time of day you ask him, right, you get different explanations. So this is consistent with a very muddled approach to foreign policy that we've seen from the Trump administration from the get-go.
And a very clear attempt to walk back what Secretary Rubio said yesterday, which was that we attacked Iran because Israel was going to attack Iran and they might retaliate against us. Then you had President Trump saying, well, I just felt like they were going to attack us, which leads people to wonder, where's the proof of that? So what is really going on here in the administration, and why can't they get their story straight?
Well, first of all, the president has access to intelligence and people that none of us do. And I believe he is probably looking at a set of information and making decisions about the likelihood of Iran attacking U.S. installations and saying, I'm just not willing to take that risk. That's a legitimate decision for a president to make. I do think...
But isn't that the opposite of what they told lawmakers when they briefed them over the weekend? They told them that there was no imminent threat to the United States, imminent attack.
I can tell you what I heard from senior administration officials with this is that they did believe there was an imminent threat. I don't really have any confusion about what we're doing there. And also, I think multiple...
It's interesting that you said that because Marco Rubio hasn't reiterated that at all. He's been talking to the press. He has not suggested that there was an imminent...
He absolutely has said that there's an imminent threat of them having ballistic missiles that they were, A, possibly planning to shoot at U.S. military installations, B, and in the short and medium term, continuing to manufacture ballistic missiles that would allow them to shield a nuclear program that they would not give up. This is a pretty clear rationale.
Let me play Marco Rubio. What Marco Rubio has been saying, what the president has been saying, there's been a lot of back and forth on this. Listen.
We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties.
You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. If anything, I might have forced Israel's hand. But Israel was ready, and we were ready.
Once the president made a decision that negotiations were not going to work, that they were playing us on the negotiations, and that this was a threat that was untenable, the decision was made to strike them. That's what I said yesterday.
No talk of an imminent attack on the United States, Rena. And look, that's important because when a decision is made to attack another country without Congress, an imminent attack or something akin to it should be on the table.
You know, this is so different from the lead up to the Iraq War in 2003, when it was all about creating a coalition, both domestically of folks on Capitol Hill, but also a global coalition. You know, Saturday morning, the UK government was beside themselves of trying to separate themselves from what had happened. What this was a decapitation strike. And I think what happened was they did not anticipate how quickly and how, with precision, the Iranians would be able to strike back on military installations. We're seeing hotels, on airports.
I love the smug attitude of Scott Jennings, especially that look on his face, because he always has that confused expression, and Tucker Carlson often carries the same kind of look as well. And it really feels like what happened here is that after the Venezuela situation, they somehow convinced themselves that this would play out the exact same way. Which is incredible, because what we are watching now feels like the Iraq War all over again, but with even less competent people in charge. And honestly, many of us once believed that George W. Bush was the dumbest president we would ever see, yet Donald Trump somehow manages to make George W. Bush look like a Mensa member. But of course Scott Jennings will spin whatever this administration says and try to present it as something positive, even when there are clearly no real positives to be found. And most Americans outside the MAGA base understand that Iran was never an immediate threat to the United States, and that this is a war the majority of Americans never wanted. Yet you still see MAGA voices like Scott Jennings repeating the same narrative, and even Trump himself, along with several clips shown by Abby Phillip, keep repeating this talking point about how this has supposedly been going on for 47 years, which is clearly a line that has been handed down for everyone to repeat. Just keep saying 47 years again and again. And even America's most clueless Senator Markwayne Mullin has been echoing the exact same message. Because just the other day, he was repeating the same line that this has been happening for 47 years. But the question I would really like to see asked, and I do not think Abby Phillip has asked it yet, is for her to look Scott Jennings or any of these MAGA defenders in the eye and ask them this simple question. If Iran has truly been an immediate threat to the United States for 47 years, then why didn't the Trump administration attack them back in 2016 when Trump first took office and instead waited until a second term? But of course Scott Jennings would probably spin that as well and somehow turn it into a long rant about Democrats and completely avoid answering the real question.
I was talking to somebody in the travel industry. He said, look, in the next 48 to 72 hours, if these airports aren't opened and traffic isn't resumed again, it's crippling to economies. You can hit first militarily, but the next thing is financial.
Are you suggesting we are not completely and totally dominating these people right now?
It's not about domination. See, that's where everyone gets excited. Go out there, throw the missiles and the bombs, and then, but what happens after, at that point? Nobody thinks of the day after the war. What's your plan?
We dominated the Taliban. We dominated Saddam's army.
Look, this is quite literally
the bottom line is, they don't want them to have ballistic missiles. They don't want them to have a nuclear program. They don't like that their Navy makes trouble for everybody in the Gulf. And that is the stated rationale. You could throw on other things. For the last 47 years, they have killed American troops. They've maimed American personnel. They've exported and funded terror around the world and around the region. And you seem to be suggesting we have no allies in this. I watched the president with the Chancellor of Germany today. He strongly supports what we're doing. The UK is feckless. Spain is feckless. But we have plenty of allies in the region and around the world who know we have done the right thing.
To be clear, I just want to you just listed a bunch of things. None of them were an imminent attack. But Rena's question is actually
ballistic missiles, Eddie. Drones. These are imminent attack weapons.
What proof is there that there were ballistic missiles, that they actually had ballistic missiles that could reach the United States?
Reach U.S. bases. Look at your television.
This is also one of the common tricks that many MAGA supporters use, because they quickly say, well, Iran was a threat. But when the United States has military bases in so many countries around the world, the argument becomes very convenient, since they claim that if someone could attack an American base, then it automatically becomes an immediate threat to the American people. But that logic does not really hold up, because it would be a threat to American bases overseas, not a direct threat to the United States itself. And the reality is that Iran was in no way a threat to people living inside the United States. Yet this narrative keeps getting pushed as part of a larger attempt by MAGA figures to build support for their war and make it sound more justified than it actually is.
Falling right now.
Iran has been attacking through their proxies U.S. military bases for some time now. Okay,
you want to keep that going, or
the argument that the administration may be making sometimes is that they might have had capabilities to attack the United States on the homeland. Where is the proof of that?
And U.S. intelligence that has been released has said that this was not at all
on our
Defense
facilities
Intelligence
in the
Agency.
region and our allies in the region.
Okay, so
it is not
what
in
about
dispute.
that? What
It
about
is
that?
not in dispute.
What about that is new?
What do you mean? What about it? It's not new. Other than to
What about
say,
that is new?
other than to say that the decision.
What about, yes, let me put it another way. What about that is imminent?
Are you all? Are you all arguing that they are not? We're not prepared and are not currently firing missiles and drones into things.
Actually, it's not that. I mean, everybody understands the threat of Iran. It's been there, to quote Tom Cotton, for 47 years.
Yeah.
The question is, what changed in the last 30 days? What changed in the last 30 days? That's the question that everybody's asking.
Can I help answer what I think the real reason, the real answer to that question is that for the past 2.5 years, that the U.S. and its allies in the region have built up what they consider to be a lot of momentum, leading to this point. Imminent, I mean, that's obviously a question that you're debating, and it's a legitimate debate. But if you look at Hamas, Hezbollah, what happened in Syria with Bashar al-Assad, if you look at what happened, in Lebanon and beyond, the feeling was that Iran, the hub of Iran, the heart of Iran, the regime, is at its weakest point in 47 years.
But this is a mistake that the U.S. makes.
I'm not.
That we believe that regime change is easy.
I'm not
and that
defending it. I'm just explaining it. And this is why it's that combined with the president was very clear when tens of thousands of protesters were in the streets and then got massacred that he, was going to try to do something about that. So the combination of all of those things and the pressure from allies in the region, not just Israel, but also Saudi Arabia, I think it ended at this point.
The biggest mistake I have made as a foreign correspondent covering these wars on the ground has been thinking that regime change is going to happen because you watch the protesters. On the ground with Mubarak, we all believed covering it, this was the moment that Mubarak was going to fall. Do you know what made Mubarak fall? It was his own security forces ended up caving in and turning on them. And so that is what we're watching in Iran right now. Will the Revolutionary Guard somehow crack? That is not an easy thing to see and achieve.
There is nothing I would like to see more than the dismantling of the Iranian regime, but this is an experiment that America has tried and failed for decades and decades and decades. Under Bush, who he worked for, under Obama, Trump promised to be different, but it is not different. He is continuing to make the same mistake of thinking that just because you remove the bad guy, everything is magically solved. Didn't work with Gaddafi, it got worse. Didn't work with Saddam Hussein, it got worse. You can't just remove the bad guy with no backup plan to build long-lasting institutions. And from everything we've seen from this administration, they have no plan. They have no plan on what's going to happen next. They have no transition plan. I don't think they know. They took out most of the people they were going to replace the supreme leader with. And now Marco Rubio contradicts Donald Trump. Donald Trump contradicts himself. Senator Markwayne Mullin doesn't seem to know what the word war even means. He's debating himself on that every single day. We need an actual plan. I haven't seen a plan from this administration, and that's worrying to me. It's very worrying.
Bobby, I'm curious.
So Adam Mockler is exactly right with what he says here, that there is no plan, and the fact that the United States, they took out some of the people that they were maybe wanting to take over for the Ayatollah. So this is likely to be an even bigger disaster than Iraq was. But ultimately, who's really pulling the strings here? Netanyahu. And he doesn't scare basically, just as long as there's chaos in Iran. And a really good point there was brought up about protesting in the streets not necessarily meaning regime change by the people of the country. If that were true that people protesting would lead to regime change, Donald Trump would be out. We've had massive protests in the United States against Donald Trump and massive anti-Trump protests around the world. But is there any danger of Donald Trump being overthrown by the people of the United States? No, there's no danger at all. We don't even know if the Democrats will win the midterms. So, I think that's a really excellent point that protests do not necessarily lead to a changing of the guard. And I saw a great comment from somebody earlier today. I don't remember where it was, but they said basically every war that we've seen, at least in modern times, in history, has been conservatives attacking other conservatives. So, in this case, our far-right government, the United States, going after the conservative government of Iran. And if the United States puts a puppet government in there, it's not going to be a progressive puppet government. It's going to be another right-wing government. You see all these people talking about, right-wingers that I see, MAGA types that I see all the time, they're the girls that can't go to school and, they're anti-gay and all that. Come on, the MAGA people, they don't care about the girls and the gay people in their own country. But do you actually think that the United States is going to install a puppet government that is going to now say, oh, kids, girls can go to school now and, we're cool with gay people? No, it's going to be whoever's the most pro-U.S. economic interests in terms of oil. I love that they all love to talk about how bad Iran is. And Trump literally said in that one segment earlier, well, we have to get rid of them because they're evil and they're bad like a second grader. Probably he's not as smart as a second grader. But if we were going to get rid of evil and bad people we would be going after Trump's buddies, the Saudis. But conveniently, that never happens because our economic interests are aligned. So, the United States, everybody knows this, but the United States doesn't care if a government is evil or bad as long as they play ball with the United States. But let me know what you think about all this. Do you agree with what Adam Macker had to say here? Do you agree with smug mega prick Scott Jennings, who's just going to parrot whatever the Trump administration has to say? Let me know in the comments what you think. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe.